What motivates you to pursue all-round fitness? I'm talking strength, muscle, mobility, and cardio, hybrid training.
Whew. Danny, you know how to dive right in. I love it. I think it just having gotten exposure to several different disciplines of fitness at a high level allowed me to just experience the beauty of each. Like, and in their isolated discipline, approach, whether it was bodybuilding when I was a kid, and I say kid, but like up until I was, 18, 19, getting collegiate sports, strength and conditioning when I was a collegiate athlete, where it's like, how do you train to get better at sport? So a lot of like traditional strength and conditioning models for, American collegiate sports, power cleans, power snatch, bench squat, deadlift, that kind of thing. Then getting exposure to, I think, my second round of like bodybuilding, which was like, now I'm not just doing bro splits, I'm doing Poliquin method stuff and really diving deep into that. Followed by like an era of my life, which was inspired and informed by Paul Chek and what Paul Chek brought to the, strength and conditioning world and the fitness world. I then went into a stint of like dating and being around cyclists and wanting to cycle and doing, medium distance cycling, not at a competitive level, but just, where I live in California, north of San Francisco is, kind of this birthplace of mountain biking and a huge road cycling community. So I got into that. Then I spent the next decade almost in CrossFit, where it was this like, I had a strength, I had a power, I had a bodybuilding, and I had an endurance background and a sports background. And then CrossFit was this new sport, this new emerging brand that claimed to just put it all together. But I would say that CrossFit introduced me to Olympic weightlifting, introduced me to calisthenics, gymnastics. I mean, not like a really beautiful, elegant representation of it, but like walking on my hands, climbing ropes, doing muscle ups, various kinds, things like that. And then of course, like huge amounts of capacity in different spectrums of, energy systems. Right. And so I put together like 15 years of like doing a little bit of everything, never being the best, but being very good. And certainly with CrossFit got really good at a lot of disciplines. And I can't imagine a life where I'm not going to want to do a little bit of everything. I have dabbled, since CrossFit, was over for me. I've dabbled in more focused, like disciplined bodybuilding or more focused disciplined endurance, but I never veer too far and think to myself like, yeah, I don't want to ever do that again. Like I just get the urge to want to experience it because I've felt it at such a high and deep level that there's just so many beautiful ways to move, and there's so many beautiful ways to be active, and they all kind of touch on something similar, which and I think when people get exposed to it, that's when they fall in love with movement and with training. And I've just fell in love with it 10 times in my life, and all 10 were equally beautiful. And I just want to keep a little bit of each.
Because when you only approach one form of fitness, i.e. bodybuilding, then if you go all in on that, you just don't have the mobility from doing different ranges of motion and stretches because you're trying to optimize for growth. If you try and maximize your strength, you're using predominantly low reps, really high intensity. If you focus all on that, you're going to miss out on the other things such as efficiently growing muscle. And then where's the cardio in that situation? When we look online, communities tend to be very myopic. It's just one way of doing things. But I think for the average person, I don't like to use that term too often because it implies just normal complacency. But we're not elite athletes. We're not elite bodybuilders. We're not elite powerlifters. Most of us aren't even trying to do the best in cardio. But if you get a little bit of each of those domains, as you've said, becoming a jack of all trades, master of none. It just seems as if you can put in this amount of work to get the majority of the gains that you're going to get from each of those disciplines.
I'm thankful that I wasn't, I don't know, maybe this is just like this self-deprecating part of my, of me, but I never considered myself like world class at CrossFit because I never won. I was never the best of the best. I was very good. But in any of the other things that I did and explored, like I was never leaps and bounds ahead of people, because I think that would have just made me get even more narrow with my focus in fitness. And you're right. Like people do tend to get into these camps. Like, this is what I do. And, and from a business perspective, if you're an online creator, or if you're somebody who's selling a service or a product, the more differentiated you can be and the more narrow you can be, you win champion. Like you get people that believe in you and you get people that hate you. And that actually is really good for business, right? So it's us against them. That's and CrossFit was a good example of that. As much as it was like, we do a lot of everything, it's like, it's us against y'all. Like you either do us or you're not in our cult. And I think something I've been really hot on lately is, I honestly can't remember who said it first, but I did hear it. And it was like, in health and fitness, because I do feel like health and fitness is what I'm trying to promote. Functional bodybuilding is my vehicle. I really believe like whatever gets somebody there is good for them. But it's like the quote I heard was, in the health and fitness industry, the biggest thing that we're fighting against and we're trying to help people is to solve compliance. Can you just keep doing it? And I think if you just look across long enough periods of time in any one person's life, you know that they're not going to do the same thing forever, especially when it comes to movement practice and exercise. So by trying to force somebody into a narrow box, you're going to have them for a short period of time, and then they're going to move on and evolve. And even with functional bodybuilding, we might do a lot of different things, but I don't have the perfect system that's going to last somebody for their lifetime. I would be naive to think that I did. But I do think that the broader we get, the more inclusive we are, the better chance that we have in empowering people to actually do the thing for a long period of time, stay consistent and be compliant.
You nailed it there, Marcus. And that is the $1 million question of how do you get people to be consistent for long enough? Because 30-day challenges, 90-day challenges, it's just not sexy to say, you need to do this for life. Okay, I need to keep training hard consistently, getting my sets in, getting my cardio in, stretching, doing all this stuff. I thought that if I just work really hard to get it, I can just coast and it will just be with me forever. But the harsh reality of that is that's just not the case. As fun as it is doing all these different disciplines, functional training, functional bodybuilding, as you said, there is the concern of the interference effect. It's the argument that if you do cardio, you do strength, you do hypertrophy stuff, it's a lot of training and it may slow your progress or plateau.
Yeah, that's true. I think that there's no question that like you don't see world champions in any discipline doing a tremendous amount of cross training. Like you want to be world class gymnast, like you're probably not doing, CrossFit Metcons.
The cyclist isn't hitting upper body weights as hard as possible 3 days a week.
Precisely. Yeah. So from that perspective, I can't argue that, and I wouldn't. And if you really step back and look at what makes somebody feel successful, like with their fitness, we're going to just call them the average person, the average Joe, right? Like I want to be strong. I want to move without pain in life. I want to be able to do the activities that require cardiorespiratory endurance that actually fit in my life. Like I don't need to go and do a triathlon, but I'm going to go on a hike with my family and I don't want to be out of breath. Like I want to sleep well. I want to look pretty good. I don't need to look like, the common, like, I don't need to look like you. I just want to look a little bit better. I'm like, great. You don't have to look like me, but I get it. You don't want to have as much body fat and you want to have a little bit more lean muscle. Like, that's just, so what gets somebody there? Well, interference effect is not the thing that's keeping people from getting that feeling at all. It's not. It's back to compliance. And so mixing disciplines together, doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, I just keep, I stick to my hypothesis that keeps people engaged enough to get to this state of like, I feel good. And now I just want to keep feeling good. I'll add one more thing to that, which is the growth of the hybrid athlete movement, where you can do you can do multiple different things. You can be a cardio bunny and you can also be a bodybuilder. That's kind of the modern day discussion of hybrid athletes, right? It's the Nick Bears. It's, you look jacked and you can run marathons fast. Awesome. Okay. CrossFit athletes were some of the first, like, really recognizable hybrid athletes. And we didn't just run and do bodybuilding. We did a lot of things. And the conversation in 2008 was, well, you're not going to be great at all these things. You're going to be a jack of all trades. And guess what? 10 years later, you had CrossFit athletes that could run competitive, 5K times whilst also clean and jerking 380 pounds. And they were 5'8". So, okay, how much is interference really like an issue here? And having lived that experience as a drug-free athlete, as somebody who just did the work and saw my performance in disciplines that were never supposed to be in the same conversation go to elite levels, I'm like, that is such a cop-out. Interference, like, cardio is going to kill your gains. Like, no, it ain't. I mean, if you tell yourself it is, then I promise you it will come true.
The idea of interference effect having such a drastic impact, it's a bit overblown, isn't it? Because we've seen so many success stories and examples in the trenches. If you stick to it long enough and you're patient with your progressive overload, you do intelligent programming, you take care of your recovery, you can reach these really high levels eventually. It's trying not to be as pessimistic with progress. Being optimistic, really raising our standards, is such a good operating system in your mind. I'm sure you don't approach your workouts, Marcus, thinking, oh, better not work too hard today. I don't want to reach all my goals. It's just this almost naive ambition beyond, oh yes, science says I can do this. It's having this just internal drive to be consistent, push yourself hard. Then before you know it, your cardio is great, got a lot of muscle mass, pretty strong on a lot of movements. And the people talking trash about CrossFit back in the day, I think it comes from just the class routines that were set up. It was just random WODs done, just whatever the gym designed. But if you follow a periodized progressive overload program where you stick to similar exercises in all the different forms of fitness, you'll make progress. But if you're just randomly doing all these different things, that's where it gets a bad rep.
Several things come to mind. Number one, that's why I created functional bodybuilding. That was it. I was like, let's just take the chaos out of it and the randomness, and let's just put structure to it. And this all works really elegantly. The other thing that came to mind is that for beginners, I do see an obstacle to trying to do too many things at once, because it's a beginner who doesn't have a lot of hours to dedicate. I mean, why could I have done that for CrossFit? Because I was putting 30 hours in a week to training. So I had plenty of time to explore different disciplines. Most people have 3 to 4 hours at max to dedicate to their fitness. So to tell them, hey, today you're going to go and do some bodybuilding. On the next day, you're going to go run at the track. And on the next day, you're going to, they're not getting enough repetition to sort of make the kind of progress that they need to make in the initial stages to see the reward from it and feel like they're going somewhere. They need to have, they got to get some motivation out of seeing some initial progress. And then the last part that I thought about too is like, if you really, the progress and the gains that you make in a very short amount of time very rarely last a long time. The 30-day challenge for nutrition, you went hard on nutrition, you cut a bunch of body fat. Ask everybody at the end of that challenge a year later how much they've really kept off, and it's usually not good, right? So, yes, like interference effect, let's just take that and take it as truth. I should just do bodybuilding to just build a bunch of muscle. All right, so you do that in your first 6 months, 12 months, like you get the newbie gains, but then you get stiff and achy and you're like, I want to go try something different. So you depart from bodybuilding altogether, right? And then you go all in on something else because now your hips and back hurt and you're going to be a mobility expert and you're doing FRC and you're doing, maybe you're going in, functional patterns. Like, because you went hard on something optimally, it didn't last versus like play the game of like doing a little bit of everything for a while. And then maybe 3, 5 years into your journey, you're like, I really love this one part. I want to go all in. It's like, it's the same thing we talk about with kids. It's like, don't specialize in soccer at 6 years old. Like, play all the sports, play a bunch. Like, could you get better at soccer from 6 to 10 years old by just playing soccer? Sure. But all the players, domestically in the US that like really succeed in the big pro sports, they didn't specialize until they were like 13, 14, 15, and they actually built a good foundation of doing a lot of things. So I know I was all over the place there, but
No, no. The big takeaway there was perfect analogy of the yo-yo dieting equivalent of exercise is going all in on your nutrition, cutting to crazy levels of body fat you can't sustain, a diet that you don't like. Also doing just one form of fitness, getting burnt out, exhausted, completely switching gears, and then also getting burnt out from that. I think it's a little bit more subtle than people think because it creeps up on you over time. You start losing your drive to work out. It's not so fun. You start not being as consistent with your routine. It's not a clear thing of, oh, maybe I'm not enjoying my routine or my exercises. That's why I don't want to work out. Because most of the time, I really look forward to my training because I pick things that are fun, diverse, a lot of different exercise that I enjoy. Sure, it's the same for you. Whereas if someone told me the best way to build strength, squat, bench, deadlift, I have to do that for the rest of my life, even if it's optimal for building well-rounded strength, say for example, I would come to not enjoy it. I wouldn't put as much effort in. I'd be dragging my feet. If I'm doing calisthenics, I'm lifting weights, I'm doing mobility, I feel like a beast. I feel like I've got so many options. My body feels good. It looks good. And most of all, you enjoy it.
yeah, that's right. And you and I maybe are at a stage of our fitness journey where the feedback loop on that is very quick. It's like, I know I find myself in this position where, let's say from January to April or May this year, I went really all in on something. And in that last couple weeks, I was like, ooh, I'm not feeling this. And I pivoted quickly, right? But that's because I've got a huge, long history of doing this and knowing that if I quit too early, I'm not going to really know if what I've gained from the process. I'm not, I haven't given myself enough time, but I know when it's time to pull the plug, and I don't sit in that period of like dissatisfaction and lack of joy for too long, because I know that that's the most detrimental thing to my mental and physical wellness, is that if I'm just doing something I don't like for too long, it's really, I'm going to be inconsistent. I'm not going to bring good effort. I'm not going to prioritize the things that I need to recover so that I can get back and do it well again. And so I pull the cord. Whereas a beginner, they try a workout program for 2 weeks and they're like, oh, this isn't fun. Like, I'm not really liking it yet. And it's like, hey, give it a little bit more time, because to like, there's going to be, the challenge isn't always just a sign that you need to bail. The challenge is often when you need to double down, and right. So it's something that I think is important for people to like build awareness of, but you build awareness of it over a long time of doing it. You don't get to say, hey, I went and did the class for 2 weeks and I didn't like it, so I'm going to go to the next thing. And then if you look back at your year, you tried 20 different things for 2 weeks each with another 16 weeks off. and now you're frustrated because you didn't really make any progress and you're not feeling good.
That novelty of changing exercises or your program is the antidote to boredom, as you've just described. How would you intelligently do that to actually make progress instead of just random exercise, changing things all the time?
Yeah. I mean, the solve that I have implemented with most of the programs that we, provide to our customers is something like, I've landed on, I mean, granted, like 6 weeks or 8 week programs, like, picking like a time frame. I'm not going to argue that 6 is better than 8 or 8 is better than 10 or whatever, but, just you see that after 6 weeks, a certain number of people start to lose interest in the thing and they're ready for a change. Okay, so let's create like some, defined window of time that you're going to at least message to yourself and to your audience, like, hey, we're going to dedicate to doing something for this long. And then within that 6 weeks, how much variety or variance is appropriate to not take away from progress, but to also provide people with something that they're excited about. So the next layer of it has been like, well, within a structured program, you will have, 12 different movement patterns that you're going to hit across, right? So, but within the movement pattern, let's call it a squat, like we can determine that this is a core anchor exercise for the duration of your 6 weeks. But then your upper pulling exercise on this day isn't really like the fundamental piece of this training session where we're going to max out on intensity. And so whether you do a supinated pull up or a pronated grip pull up, or you do a body row, or you do some other body weight variation of a pulling exercise, I can come up with, you could come up with 100 different ways to pull. And so let's just give you a different variation of pull every week. So you're still training the same pattern, but you get some variance and some nuance, right? And I found that was actually what really catapulted functional bodybuilding, my business, with the audience that I had at the time. Was I was showing, hey, there's 10 different ways that we can press. And they're like, oh, all I knew was a barbell strict press. I'm like, no, you can do it with a landmine. We can do it with kettlebells. We can do it with mixed, loading. We can hold a kettlebell at our side and we can press with the other arm. We can mix and match patterns. We can pull while we're pushed. Like, they're like, oh, this is, but when I look at it from a design perspective in an exercise like program building, I'm just like, it's just a push. I'm just pushing, right? And that has been a really important staple in the way I've worked with people. Is like, you go 6 weeks and every Monday, exercise 3 is a push, but for 6 weeks, it looked different. Therefore, it felt a little different. And that was just enough variance to make somebody feel like, oh, it's never the same. But it is the same. It is the same pattern. It is the same general group of muscles. And yeah, they may have been doing conventional deadlift for 6 weeks as their exercise A, and then exercise B might be, another staple. But then you find exercises like your third or fifth exercise in a training session is usually not the most intense. You're already fatigued and you're already kind of, your mind is kind of like coming down off of the high of like bringing forth great effort. And so whether I do, an archer pull up, or I do a single arm ring row, or I do some other variation of a body weight pulling exercise, it's not going to really make or break the efficacy of the training program and the training split. So that's where I found places to put variation in that keep people engaged and keep it fun and keep them learning new skills. And it's something that I have just enjoyed so much over the last 8 or 9 years since leaving CrossFit, because as varied as CrossFit was, for 7 or 8 years, I was doing cleans, squats, thrusters, burpees, pull-ups, handstand push-ups, like some variation. It was the same stuff over and over again.
So keep your workout split, what you do on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the same, but you're swapping the exercise type in that category in each of the sessions.
That is probably the number one area that people experience. Like, for somebody who's not really educated on like the nuances of program design, it's the easiest way for people to feel variance is with exercise selection, right? Now, if you just always are changing exercises every single week, it's hard to progress. So you have to be like thoughtful about how many of those you're going to do. So if over the course of 6 weeks, like if 30% of your exercises are changing every week, that's a good number, right? But then we go like, because of, again, my exposure to the CrossFit world and all the different programs that were put out, when it comes to resistance training, it's like straight sets, supersets, EMOMs, every 2 minutes, mixing resistance training with some gymnastic skill. Like there's 100 ways that I could just write a delt tricep press, complex. And so it might be that week 1, we're doing straight sets of, landmine presses, but in week 2, we're doing landmine press on the even minute, landmine press on the odd minute, or on the first minute, second minute, and then the third minute, we're doing a bodyweight dip. And so now they're like, oh man, this is so different. But it's like 1 week we just focused on straight sets of strength. And then the next weekend we focused on like a strength endurance thing where we mixed in an extra exercise. And that suddenly adds variance and nuance to like what they're experiencing. Because, again, people aren't actually looking at, they're getting more smart online to be like, oh, that's not enough volume and this and that. But it's like, again, the average person doing a training program, when they see, body weight dip, 6 reps, and then the next week it's 8, and then the next week it's 10, and then they go back down to 6 for 4 sets, and then it just feels the same. They don't. But if it was dips, and then the following week it was a dip right into a push up, and then the third week it was a dip followed by like a heavy front rack kettlebell carry, and then you just cycled through just different, and the dip stayed the same, 6 reps heavy, like throughout the whole thing, they would feel like that program feels way different to the person than the same thing that they see with different reps and sets.
This variation, it's not optimal for progress because the world's strongest or peak performers, they don't train like that. They train in the boring, predictable, just exercise the exact same. But a lot of variation is optimal for adherence, which is the biggest barrier for the average Joe or just most of us training.
Yeah. Well, and that's so good that we started the conversation with like, talking about what is optimal versus what gets people excited to do the thing, right? It's like, the optimal way to grow wealth is to just follow Elon Musk's life. It's like, would you trade? I might trade my bank account with him, but I would not trade my lifestyle because that guy works maniacally 20 hours or whatever a day, never takes a day off. And he has admitted that like it's a torture in his brain to be who he is.
Probably doesn't have time to spend with his 15 kids that he's got as well.
Yeah, right. That too. So it's like, what is optimal versus would you trade? It's like, I can see like the world's strongest man, like that's incredible, but I wouldn't trade how he got the strength. I might want to live a day being the strongest person alive. I might want to live a day being, a level 10 elite Olympic caliber gymnast, but like, that's a lot of hours and a lot of missed birthday parties to, be able to call yourself that. And that's not for everybody.
Fitness FAQs has the best workout programs from beginner to advanced level. Use the code podcast20 at checkout to save 20% when shopping at fitnessfaqs.com. Don't miss this discount. Start training smarter and enjoy the gains. As someone who's approaching his 33rd birthday, I'm starting to think a lot more about longevity. What should I be doing and not doing in my workouts if I want to keep doing this for years to come?
Well, as somebody who just turned 41.
You got me beat. Damn it.
Got you beat by a little bit. It's something I do. I do think about a fair amount, and also my target audience is older, 40s and 50s, and it's the number one thing that, like, next to like I want to look better. It's like I also want to just feel good and do this for a long time. I want to be able to play with my kids more, my grandkids. Like I hear that constantly, and so. In training, it's funny. It's like, on the one hand, you have to speak to your younger self and be like, look, I was more resilient earlier in life, not because genetically or just due to chronological age, I was like able to recover more. That is true. However, when you get older, life responsibilities grow in ways that you didn't expect, right? So you're 33, and should you decide and you be fortunate enough to have kids, guess what? Like, you just added a massive stressor to your stress bucket. And so your resilience and your ability to recover and repair is just going to drop like very fast, not as a not has nothing to do with your chronological age, it just has to do with life and how life becomes more complex. Not just like, oh, it's harder. It's like, no, you have things that you want to point your energy to that are not building muscle and having the optimal, range of motion and mobility. So you have to speak a little bit to your younger self and just say, hey, what I was able to do then is different than what I'm able to do now. My priority is these other things. And so you have to bring a mentality into the gym of, I am not here to kill myself for the sake of killing myself in the gym. I'm here because I want to be able to show up in these other ways. It's sort of like you have to mature a bit in your heart, in your mind, in your emotions, because that is something that, like, I could play CrossFit, the game of CrossFit, hard and with recklessness because I didn't have much else that I needed to do. Whereas now that is not the case. Now, if I flip to the other side of that, for people who are getting into their 40s who already have all of this on their plate and they come in to fitness, there's it's almost like a different mentality with them. It's like you think you're capable of nothing. You're afraid of you're afraid you're going to break. You're afraid that if you push hard, everything's going to, fall apart and you're going to be at massive risk. And for those individuals, I really counsel them to, one, learn a simple system of fitness so that when you go and train, you can build enough confidence quickly so that you can really challenge yourself and work really hard. And because at that point, I have seen it so much. I've seen it in my parents. I've seen it in people in their 50s and 60s and even in their 40s. They're just like, I just want to maintain. I just don't want to, I'm like, guess what? Maintenance is not, there's not free lunch there. Like, you got to work hard to maintain, especially at 40, 50, and 60. Like, the muscle is wanting to vanish. You got to actually work hard to quote unquote maintain. And that is, circle back to CrossFit, is one of the reasons why CrossFit was so powerful from my perspective as a coach who was coaching a lot of people in their 30s and 40s at my box, was that CrossFit made people work hard that didn't even know they were coming in to work that hard. It was the most, is one of the most potent, recipes for intensity that could just sneak up on people. And it taught people to work hard very fast. And it is why people in their early stages of CrossFit, first, we'll call it 12 to 24 months, just fell in love because the results were real. People were really getting results from just working hard, like, which always happens. If you just work really hard and you're really intense with your fitness, you start to adapt. Like, your body's like, whoa, this is crazy. I got to get stronger. I got to build some capacity. And so that is what, again, like, coming back to the person who's thinking about longevity, it's like, don't accept this notion of, like, longevity is almost like what people want to use as an excuse to, like, I don't have to work as hard because I'm just trying to maintain for the long haul. And it's like, oh, it just like, I'm like, we got to flip that narrative. It's like, no, you're starting late. You got to work really hard. And we just got to do it in a way that's smart and acknowledges that you can't recover like you did when you were 26, when you had no kids and no job and no mortgage and no anything. Now you do. So let's just commit to 2 or 3 days, go into the gym, follow something simple that's, that you can do, but get after it. Really get after it.
You've got to meet yourself where you're at, because a lot of the people listening to this podcast have a long history of training, and eventually you're going to creep into your 30s and 40s and beyond. And it's not an all or nothing thing. It's not, oh, okay, now I'm older, can't deadlift, bad for your back, it's risky, going to blow out that disc, which is an absolute complete myth. If you're training sensibly and using loads that suit your situation, not what you used to be. That's something that I've really taken from you, Marcus, because as you add more things onto your plate, family, your sleep's probably going to go down a bit in certain cases. Your recovery bucket, it's not what it used to be. So trying to compare your numbers currently to what it was when you were in your 20s, peak testosterone, sleeping 10 hours a day, zero responsibilities, it's just not the same.
Now, I heard this, it was, I didn't hear it in full context, but I heard this line. So Peter Attia hosted like a roundtable podcast recently that got a lot of attention because it had Mike Boyle, Jeff Cavalier, I want to say like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon on it. Maybe that was like the roundtable. And I think Mike Boyle, who's in his 60s, said something like, I'm in my beef jerky era of life, meaning that like his muscles and his, like he was referring to his own, like, his own physical condition, not like he's out of shape, but like, hey, this is just the age of life where you're just kind of dried out and brittle.
I was a bit
and
defeatist
like,
from that longevity perspective.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think that from an expert and like a legend in the strength and conditioning community, maybe again, taken out of context, heard by the wrong person, is only going to just like enhance that fear of like, oh, well, Mike Boyle says like, at 60, you got to just be real careful. Like you got to really, and again, like to my first point, yes, you're not 26. Like, yes, you got more on your plate, but when you get in there, like our bodies, they'll remain resilient to a certain degree. Like you can challenge it. You have to challenge it, because if you don't, you are just slowing down the decline process, but you really are showing up. You want to maintain, and if anything, like most people that are 40s and 50s that are training, they still have a lot of room to improve capacity and strength and resilience. So it's like, don't fall into that narrative of like you're broken, you're one wrong movement away from being on an operating table. I just I don't love that.
You know what happens? This is what my belief is. As you get into this age, it's not a matter of you've hit your limit based on your chronological age. It's more out of your circumstances. You just can't dedicate all your resources to training hard, eating well, and sleeping. It's more of just out of a lifestyle component as opposed to, oh, I've hit this age, can't do it. Because I'm sure that you get the dudes in their 40s or 50s that all they do is train. And they probably look like savages and perform really well.
Yeah, I'm. It's like the thing I'm calibrating for, really, for like, I look back on the years of like, competitive CrossFit, or even just like college athletics. It was like I had a plan, a year-long plan, a 3-year-long plan. Like, this is what I got to do. I'm just going to do it, right? And that was where, I made my the biggest gains of my life, right? Really just dedicating to a process. Now, I actually recognize that the best, whatever allows me to show up to the gym and train with what I know constitutes like intensity, qualifies as intensity, that's the best thing for me. And so I'm constantly calibrating that all the time with how I look at where I'm going to devote my hours in the gym. Earlier this year, I'm doing 4 kind of 90-minute to 2-hour bodybuilding sessions, and I went hard on it. And now in the season of like October, November, December, like that's not in the cards for me. So I'm doing 3 sessions that are full body, and the volume is cut in half. And then I'm dedicating my other hours to like more intense cardio training, because I know I can bring a level of intensity that actually moves the needle on some, fitness marker. And that's really all I'm trying to optimize for, is like, what gets me in the gym to train really hard? Is it half the volume? Is it 2 days a week? Is it 4 days a week? Is it, 2 long rides on the weekend on my mountain bike and then 3 gym sessions during the week? Like, that's all I'm really adjusting. And the thought of like, I'm going to build out like a 20-week training program, like, I watched Jeff Nipper post, like, I just ran this experiment, like everything was dialed in for the last 100 days and this is what I'm doing. And I'm rolling out this new program. I'm like, it seems cool to like really dial something in that much, but like, that's just not my life right now. I'm just not, that's not the season I'm in. And I want to, like, that's what am encouraging people that I work with or in my age brackets. Like, it's okay. Like, you're on 5 days a week last year, like, go down to 4. Like, that's what this needs right now. And they're like, oh, but I gotta do. I'm like, no, you don't have to do 5. You can do 4. Like, and oh yeah, you just had a baby two months ago. Like, we're going down to 3 days a week. They're like, oh, I'm gonna lose. No, you're not. You just, this is where you're at. Go to 3, because 3 intense sessions is gonna blow 5 mediocre half-ass sessions out of the water 100% of the time.
I'm glad you raised that point about how you're shifting your focus. You're still doing everything, but to different extents. This is a hard question, but I'm sure you're able to answer this one. How do you determine what is the sweet spot where, if you were to keep adding in each of those areas of fitness, there's a point of diminishing returns where your progress is going to really slow down, you'll plateau, or you'll even regress? What does enough look like to you? And how do you determine that? Is it a feeling? Is it, I hit these numbers?
I'm going to give an answer that's just very personal to me, because I've pretty much spent most of my career, especially since like 3 years into CrossFit and beyond, really trying to like evaluate that question. When is doing more like beneficial, or when do I need to pivot to do something else? For a long time, my body gave me very clear signals from a physical recovery standpoint, you know, and I was thankful for a long time. I had a coach that was like really, I was one of his like high performing clients. We were very in touch. He was very close to my program design on a daily basis. It was like, the best thing you could imagine, like having a high level elite coach that's like literally with you every step of the way. But it was almost like I just had a feeling. I just had this feeling like, man, I'm run down. My my body's starting to hurt. I'm starting to feel like, for the first 6 weeks of doing this, like every week I got into the gym and I just felt stronger. And then the last week, my joints kind of hurt. And when I showed up and I looked at the weight, I was like, ooh, I don't really want to. Right. So it was like this feedback loop, and I would just let them know. We take a 3 or 4 day deload, start a new training progression the next Monday. And it was like, cool. We just backed way off and we're starting new progression. So like I can get back into it and start to feel that build again. So that's one. The other is more so that's like the body speaking to me. And then the other part is just the mental side of it too. It's like, when you say like, I wake up most days excited to go do my training, um, my one of my old coaches used to say he had the 3 H's. It's like, you wake up, are you happy? Are you horny? And are you hungry?
Yes.
And if you're not feeling all 3 of those things, then you're pushing the stress too far, right? So you come up with your own acronym, you come up with your own things, but happy, excited, when someone's like, oh, I don't need to hit that workout this afternoon. I'll go do something else. Like, that right there is a sign that like you're not being drawn to this thing, because it's no longer, you're not feeling the reward of it. It's starting to feel too hard. You've lost the excitement, something, right? It's like, when I start feeling like, oh, I don't really want to do that, I'll skip it and do computer work instead. I'm like, oof, yeah, that's not.
And it's the difference between an acute feeling of that versus a chronic one. We're not perfect. You or I. People might see us on social media. Oh, look, they've got all these attributes. They're always so positive. We wake up probably once a week not wanting to do the workout, even if we're completely fresh. But it's if you're doing this for weeks, every single day, the workout, that's a better sign. It's also looking at your trends of performance, I find is very helpful. If you're completely stuck on a certain weight, a certain rep range for a really long period of time, plus those symptoms that you're feeling, that is another marker that, I've been going hard at this for 8 weeks. I'm also feeling these symptoms, and the actual objective performance in your lifts is also not there as well.
Well, and that, I think at different stages of the fitness life cycle, right, you have to be more, you have to pay attention to that more, right? As an advanced trainee, my weights might stay the same for a while, and I have to just acknowledge that, like, yeah, I'm at the tail end of my curve where I'm not going to see, large performance gains. But somebody is certainly in the first 3 years of like structured training, that's a clear sign that something's off. Like, you should be getting stronger still, and you should be feeling progress, not just, you should be seeing it objectively, but subjectively you should be feeling it. It's like the weights might stay the same for a few weeks, but you're like, I'm just controlling this better, like it's right there, I'm on the cusp. You just keep pushing through that. Those are still signs that things are going well. But yeah, it's like, when I got some of those CrossFitters who were in that 18 months to 3 year range, when they're past the honeymoon phase of like everything gets better every day, you set a new, like you're ringing the PR bell literally every other session. And then they're like, whoa, my deadlift's I'm not getting stronger. That's when I would say to them, like, you're right. Like, you're doing too many Metcons. Like, you want to get stronger. Let's tone it down, like on the 20-minute AMRAPs, and let's do like a deadlift progression, like let's change the approach so that you can, because you have not maxed out your deadlifting potential at 18 months into training. You're just not focusing enough energy towards it, and you're doing, you're spreading your 3 hours a week across too many disciplines, and now you clearly want to get better at something.
What I'd also add for my intermediate and advanced people is be patient with your progressive overload. I'm the type of dude, if I'm feeling good, even if I'm not feeling good, I have this tendency to want to push hard all the time. So if I'm feeling really good on a day and I can add an extra 5 kilos on a lift, you better believe I'm going to do it. Whereas I learned the consequence of that over time, where it cooks progress in the next exercises, the next day, the week after that. Now I also refer to it as patient overload. You're just doing a little bit. It's about these small wins over time, which it gives you more dopamine and gratification because you're setting PRs more often, and it gives you a longer runway of making progress over time.
Yeah, I was training with Alec Blenis. He came to visit me.
He's a legend.
He's legend, exactly. And we I was like, I've been kind of really consuming a lot of his content at the time, and there's clearly exercises that, he really is, I don't want to say made popular, but like this is clearly like his thing that he's doing right now. So we did a training session where we put a lot of those things together, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to kind of run this for, 6 to 8 weeks, and in our session together, I always like it the first week of something new to just really just set the bar low, because I want to feel wins for the weeks to come, and he was like, oh yeah, you gotta pad the progression a little bit. Like, it's your first week, like undershoot by a lot, so that next week when you come in and you like work a little bit harder, you see progress, and then you work a little bit harder, you see progress.
It sounds good on paper, but what happened in reality?
What happened in reality when he me doing single leg RDLs with the landmine, I think I like torched my back for like a good 2 weeks because he put like I don't know, like 100 kilos on the bar. And I was like, are we really doing this right? Okay.
When you do something like that, where you have a session with a friend, or you just really say to yourself, okay, this one set, I'm just going to go balls to the wall, absolutely go for it. It shocks me every time of how, if you get this level of arousal and focus, what you can actually do to your body. I'm not saying it's productive. I'm just saying that it gives you this bar of, if I wanted to, like gun to my head, I could go to this level of intensity.
Yeah, I think having those sessions, you know, at some reasonable frequency is good for people because we can get complacent on like, oh, I'm working hard. Oh man, I'm not even working close to what I'm capable of. And so, I work with clients for a lot of years, and most of them don't live in my local area, so they come and visit periodically. I'll get this, people that come and visit me, and I always like to give them that experience of like, let Coach Marcus be in your ear, encourage you, push you through a set, and just widen this gap of like what you're capable of. Like, this is what I've been doing, and this is what I'm holy like just happened last week. Like, my happens to be a client that does live locally, and he's been training around the gym a little bit more than he has in the past. And he was doing a leg session, and he was getting ready to do leg press. And I was like, hey man, I'm jumping in with you. And he's doing, 4 plates, and he does a set. And then I get on, I just bang out 20 reps. And I'm like, okay, man, we're warming up. Are we going up? Like, what are you doing? That was a warm up set. And he's like, really? I was like, yeah, dude, put some more weight on. And, he ended up doing like a set of 4 or 5 with like 6 or 7 plates on, and like quivering legs, and just like, I'm spotting it to get it up on the last rep. And, he texts me later, and he's like, man, that was exactly what I needed. Like, I don't think I have even come close to pushing myself on the lower body exercises because I just don't know. Maybe I've been afraid. I'm not sure, but like that really helped me. And is he going to come in and do the same weight the next day? No, or the next week. But he's going to know that like, oh yeah, those 4 plate sets that I was doing, that wasn't really. I wasn't even getting close to my potential.
Have you heard of Jeffrey Verity Schofield in the fitness space? Basically, he's a very large natural bodybuilder. He was based in China, but he's born in America. I had a week free, so I thought, let's use this freedom that I currently have before life gets busy. Went over, spent a week there, and then essentially did 6 workouts with him. And when you're around someone else that's fired up and you challenge each other, Jesus, how far can you push your training? We did a challenge of 140 kilo RDLs. Just how many reps can you do? So then I think I get like 16 reps. Then he gets 14 or 15. And it's just that, I think it's just the bro mentality within us that's just, it's just always there. It's just, oh yeah, I'll just push.
I mean, I'll tell a fun story about that. Is like, in my competitive CrossFit days, we were the people that were in the top of the sport. We were pretty much dispersed all around the US and globally, but none of us lived close to each other. So we would all train in our own gyms, and we would chat. But there were about 6 of us that kind of had the same coach. He was based out of Scottsdale. And like 2 or 3 times a year, we would all go down to Scottsdale for a week. And I'll tell you, like, those flights down there, I was just sick to my stomach. I'm like, oh, because like, look, doing a weight training set can get nasty. Like a hard leg day with like people pushing, like that's gross. But CrossFit workouts with other people that you're racing against, like some of those things that we did were just like, just fear inducing to like the core. And like, it was always like, we had to get the first workout out of the way before everyone could actually like loosen up and have a good time. Cause we're all just like stressed and anxious. And like, I would no sleep the night before and show up and be like, what's coach going to have us do? And, we used to do like one of my coach's like favorite tests. And he was like the first in the CrossFit space to like really use this as a benchmark, was the 10-minute Airdyne or 10-minute assault bike max calorie test. And when you do that in your own gym, no one's around, like it's hard, but you can coast, like you can back off. So we get there and we walk into the room and there's just two bikes in the middle of the room facing each other. And then there's a list of who's going in what order.
Oh, wow.
And it was like you basically were going to get on with 8 guys surrounding you and coach sitting there just right next to your ear. Just there's no hiding. And I remember that so vividly because in the last minute, like if you do it right, you really have just enough in the tank to push full lactic. And so I I had kind of exerted myself too much in the first 9 minutes, but like I knew I was going to hear it from everybody and it was going to be a push to the end. And I tell you, I got to the end of that. I blacked out with 30 seconds left, easily blacked out. And I just remember looking over to my buddy he was like the biggest guy in the room. He's like 210. And I just said, Danny, catch me. And I just fell off the bike into his arms. He dragged me to the corner. I lay there. I think it may have been 30, 40 minutes, like didn't say a word. I was just like on another planet. And it was like, there's no way that's ever going to get replicated on my own. Like there's a few people on the planet that can push themselves like that without anybody in the room, but I'm not one of them. And so, yes, like getting in those circumstances, if I trained like that every day, I would have been a broken man. But periodically getting a hit of that and getting around that kind of energy is it made us all so much better.
That story's hilarious of how nasty the feeling is. I've never done the air bike for that amount of duration. My extent of my lactic pushing my limits is just doing a Wingate test, a cycling all-out endurance test for 30 seconds on a bike when I was in my exercise science degree. You hear on paper, 30 seconds, just pedal the bike as fast as you can. No joke, after 8 seconds, when is this thing going to end? And you just, your body's, your legs, just the lactic acid is just nuts. You got people next to you yelling, come on, Daniel, faster, faster.
You're like, I'm going fast. Am I not going fast?
I never do cardio, but you expect me to do an all-out test? Sure. I want to touch on some practical stuff for scheduling this routine that has a lot of different things. How would you, from a tactical perspective, do weightlifting, also do cardio into a day?
If it fits into people's life, I do, as much as CrossFit introduced me to like putting it all together into simultaneous workouts, I look back on that like CrossFit was the game, the sport, like to play where you did it all together. But when we trained, we mostly trained these disciplines separately.
That is a great point. That is a great point.
You could play, yeah, you could just do like I think I outlined kind of like what was my training split when I did CrossFit. It was like, well, mornings I did lots of cardio. It could be assault bike, it could be rower, it could be running. Sometimes it would be like some kettlebell swings and some runs and things like that. But it was always simple enough that I could just be in an aerobic state. Then at noon, I would come back and I do a lot of weightlifting. It would be Olympic lifting most days, plus some powerlifting, squat, bench, deadlift, whatever. And then maybe some accessory lifts, but like get strong. And then there would be like kind of a third session where it was like, okay, now go play the sport. This is where we do our Metcons, right? And the Metcons were like, you got to learn skills, you got to learn transitions, you got to learn, just like you in basketball, you got to learn technique, you got to learn all these things to play the game well, but you don't go play the game every day in order to get better at your free throws. You take 1,000 free throws, right? Like that's how you get better at the thing. So I still like the idea of like separating modalities. I just think it works best for most people. If you wake up today and you're like, I got to weight train and I got to do some skill work and I got to do conditioning, and you're like a 40-year-old with a family and a career, and it's like, that's kind of crazy. I don't know that that's going to really work out so well. So that's kind of my, have resistance training days, and then have aerobic training days, and just pick the balance of the two that helps you towards whatever goal you have, right? if someone's like deep into body composition, they want to recomp, it's like do more resistance training, walk more steps, focus on your diet, and then mix in 1 or 2 aerobic sessions a week just to keep you, keeping up some cardiovascular health. That's kind of my first answer. But my second answer, for those people who really do still enjoy the experience of mixed modal training, which was another way of just saying CrossFit play, right? Where you run, do gymnastics, do weights, maybe against a clock or in intervals or some type of format like that. Then the way that I have programmed it for years with like my functional bodybuilding programs is that we do, let's say it's like the training split is like, upper, lower kind of thing. Or maybe it's like an upper, lower followed by 2 full body days that are like full body push, full body pull. You would come in and you would, as most people would, advise, it's like get into the gym. The first thing you do, your hardest, most intense resistance training. Then you would follow that up with a couple strength accessory exercises that hit the movement patterns and the body part split of the day or whatever you're doing. And then I would program a conditioning workout that was this mixed modal CrossFit style, where we're going to do some aerobic work, but we're going to pair that with movement patterns that match the day's, design. So it would be, a good one would be like, come in, we're going to do incline Smith machine bench press. Okay, so that's your first big lift, and then we're going to go into, a kneeling landmine press, and we're going to pair that with a single arm dumbbell row. So it's like a push pull, right? Then you're going to go into you're going to do 5 interval sets where you're going to, ride the assault bike for 20 calories. You're going to get off and you're going to go do 15 push-ups. You're going to follow that up with 10 strict pull-ups. And then you're going to rest for 90 seconds, and you're going to do that on repeat. So it's push-pull with aerobic built in. And so that is kind of like how I structure a 60-minute session for somebody who's like, I want to get a taste of everything. I've only got 4 sessions a week to do it. I'm not going to go do cardio on my off hours because I don't have the time, or it's not my preference. I want to be in the gym 4 days a week, and I want to be there for 60 minutes. I want to get strength, and I want to keep making progression on my big lifts and big compound movements. I want to make sure that I'm touching some accessory lifts. And then when I do my cardio, I prefer to do a mixture of things. I don't like to just get on a bike or a Stairmaster for 30 minutes. I want to do a circuit like this, but it's not random like, oh, we're going to do this exercise because it looks cool. We're going to do push-ups because we just benched and we did landmine presses, and now we're doing a body weight, push, and we did single arm dumbbell rows, and now we're going to mix in some pull-ups to go with that, and we're going to do it in an interval so that you can actually push some higher threshold, capacity. And so that for the person is like, I want to do strength and conditioning. This is essentially CrossFit class with structure to it. That is how I program my CrossFit classes for the last 5 years that I was a CrossFit gym owner. And then that just became, okay, this is just how I do functional bodybuilding for people who like this method. And it really suits a lot of people.
It's such a palatable way to introduce cardio for people who know the benefits of increasing cardiorespiratory fitness. But the standard is you got to run. You got to do your 5K. You got to do your steady state cardio. It's just, you can accomplish your heart rate zone with an infinite number of mediums, the rower, the Stairmaster. Like, keep it fun, keep it interesting, and you'll get those adaptations.
Yeah, I mean, that session, even with the interval rest periods, even the fact that you're doing body weight exercises, like I put a heart rate monitor on myself for, 5 sets with 90 seconds rest. That's going to take anywhere from 18 to 20 minutes to complete that session. My heart rate's going to be 135 to 155 or 160 the entire time. And it's like, most people are not getting 20 minutes of, that heart rate zone enjoyably on a monostructural device that's out there where they're staring at a screen. Some people are, and that's great if you like it. But it's like, what gets you excited to do it? Okay. If doing circuits gets you excited, then let's just program them responsibly and use exercises that are not high skill so that when you're aerobically fatigued, you're being challenged to go and turn upside down and smash your head into the ground and call it a handstand push-up when you don't really have the strength or the capacity to be doing that right now.
People are excited. They want to do a lot of these different modalities, mixing methods, but it can be really overwhelming with all the different exercise options. My biggest advice is knowing the purpose of everything that's in your program. You don't have to have it at a scientific, biomechanical perspective, knowing the in-depth rationale for everything. But you need to know, I'm doing this vertical pull for this purpose. I'm doing this form of cardio for this. Because if you don't, it's easy just to see an exercise online. Oh, I'll just put it in. And before you know it, you've got this laundry list of exercises where you can be actually doing too much, wasting time, even just wasting energy as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to wake up each day, scroll Instagram and figure out my workout. That's where people get into a really tough. Yeah. And then, and I've always encouraged people to like learn the why of what they're doing. We had kind of we still mention it from time to time, but we kind of had a big campaign like within functional bodybuilding of, become a thinking athlete, like go to the gym and learn what you're doing, right? You're going to have more success if you know the why behind what you're doing. But even that's, as I've aged more, as I've gotten more
the wise Marcus,
and I just recognize that like, some people just want to show up and just do the thing. They just don't want to learn. Like they're putting all their mental energy towards figuring out how they're going to get their kids to and from school and practice today and coordinate with their spouse on pickup times. And, did you file the form for tomorrow's like volunteer thing? Or, oh, there's a field trip today. Like I need to go on this. Like there's an infinite number of things that they need to fill their brains with that are not understanding the nuances of what's going on. And that's where like, I think we can serve so many people. It's like, there's crap programs out there that are just not thoughtful. And then there's programs that have thought behind each piece of it. And it's like, just, find a creator that at least you can trust and believe is like, oh, they're actually thinking about what they're doing and what they're giving to us. Like it's easy to spot. It's also easy to spot when somebody's not. And that way you can show up with confidence. Like, okay, if I just do this thing and I follow at least like the 1 or 2 line blurb about like why we're doing this section of training, like I'm going to be good. And then I don't have to like become, a pseudo exercise scientist.
Marcus, that was an awesome chat, my friend. Where can people find out more about your work?
Come over to functional-bodybuilding.com. Check us out, or just check me out on social media at Marcus Filly on all the platforms.
You'll be in good hands, guys. Check it out.